Well, it's Saturday, the 26th of September, 1987, and we are at Aunt Margaret Lawrence's place on M72, west of Grayling, Michigan, between Kalkaska and Grayling. And we're just out here in her yard and chatting with her. And we've kind of imposed on her today. We asked her if she'd give us a little history of her family.
Well, my father's people came from the Mohawk Valley in New York State, and he always wanted to go back there. And he sold our farm when I was a freshman in high school out by Gaines, and we did go back there. But we didn't stay long because the farm he'd bought, it was a beautiful house and had a pool table in the house, but the people took that with them, of course, when we met. But it had big rooms and had a big porch all the way around it. And the land was, the soil was red, just like the soil in Georgia. And it wasn't too productive, not as much as he had thought it would be. So we only stayed that summer and went back to Michigan in the fall.
Now this was...
when I was in high school.
That your father's name was?
Hunt, Cecil Hunt.
Okay. And your mother?
My mother's people came from Canada. She was the only one born in the United States. And there was 7 of them, 4 boys and 3 girls.
What was her maiden name?
Her name was Knox. Her mother's name was Watson. And on their marriage, on the grandparents' marriage certificate, Grandpa Knox was 30 when they were married, and Grandma was 25, I believe, which was unusual in those days. And it said on their marriage certificate, Priscilla Watson, spinster, and Thomas Knox, bachelor.
Oh.
And they had 7 children after they were married and took care of 5 old people. And my mother said she was the youngest one. And there was always an old uncle or aunt sitting behind the stove in the kitchen, knitting socks or mittens or something.
There on the screen door, see him?
Oh, yeah. John was the oldest. He never married. Then Uncle Robert and Uncle Reuben. And then Aunt Martha and Aunt Mary and Mother. And they had a brother Charles who had died from black diphtheria in Canada.
Okay.
Should I go to bed?
Now when they moved from Canada, where did they come?
I think they must have come to North Branch there where they had that farm.
North Branch, Michigan?
North Branch, Michigan. As far as I know, that was the only place they ever lived. And on Dad's side of the family, he had 2 brothers. He was in the middle. Uncle Ermund was the oldest one. And then my father, and then Uncle Gifford.
Okay.
And you don't want to know about
Where
their
did they originally come from?
They came from New York State.
And how did your mother meet your father?
They met at a shadow social.
What's a shadow social?
Where you have a sheet up. You have them at school. You have a sheet up, and the girls show their shadow on the sheet. You have it all dark and the light behind the sheet, because we used to have them at school. And then the men by the shadows.
Oh, I'll be darned.
I had never heard of that.
Oh, hadn't you?
No.
Then you brought a box lunch, which you shared.
Okay. Well, then, if she was at North Branch, Michigan, where was the shadow social?
Probably at the school near there.
He had come from New York State to visit or something?
No, they lived on a farm. They lived only about 5 miles from my grandparents. His folks lived only about 5 miles, but they'd never met. In those days, you see, you went with horse and buggy, or you walked or rode a bicycle. My father had a bicycle. And he had ridden a bicycle from Michigan down to Kentucky. My mother said to see a girl, but I never heard him say anything about seeing a girl. Evidently she didn't please him because he didn't stay there. But imagine riding a bicycle in those days clear to Kentucky. And I never heard him. They lived on that farm at North Branch.
Okay.
And then his folks lived just 5 miles from him on another road, but they had never met. So
They were, yeah. Were they born in New York though? They didn't move to New York until after.
Well, I was in high school.
Okay, that's right.
I see. All right.
Well, then he asked my mother if he. My mother was only 16, you see, and he was 24, 25.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked her if he could come to get her Saturday night, and they'd go for a ride or go somewhere. And she said yes. Well, after she got home, she'd never gone to that Betty, I guess, and she hoped that it would rain or something so he wouldn't come because she didn't know whether she really wanted to go with him or not. But it did rain, but he came. And they went, and then they kept going together. And we were married in 1904 in November, or in January, and I was born in November 1904. On a farm in North Branch, my father and mother had bought a farm, and for wedding gifts, at that time you would get quilts and blankets and canned fruit and jellies and a pig maybe and some chickens and a cow if you were lucky to start housekeeping. And that's what they got from different people. And then we lived there till I was about 4 years old. I hadn't started school yet. And the market, my father wanted to raise potatoes, or did raise potatoes there, I guess. But the markets weren't good around North Branch and Lapeer, and around Flint they were. Flint was really starting to be quite a city at that time. So he bought a farm down 5 miles from Flint. And we moved there before I started school. And we lived there, then I went to school, 8 years there, to that country school. All of us did eventually.
What road? Do you remember where that farm was located?
Yes, right on, it was on the river road then. It's a Beecher Road now. It was a river road. And we went to a little country school. Later I taught that school. But it was a standard school. It was a brick standard school when I taught it, but it was a country school when I went there. And I had this German teacher, Lydia Sichlag, that was so good. And later this hall, yeah, don't forget that, this hall or building at Kalamazoo was named for Lydia Sichlag.
Western Michigan, right.
Western Michigan.
So you're the oldest.
I know.
You were born in 1904. Then who came next?
Then Mildred came next in 1906, Mervyn in 1908, Philip in 1910, Maynard in 1912, and Merrill, I don't know if he came, Merrill 70, 71. I don't know if he came 2 or 3 years later. I think maybe 2 years. And then Mary didn't come. Mary,
1921.
1921.
Then Billy?
And 1926. Must have been Fisher. She was born the same year as Phil was.
To New York State, well, you were in high school
Right.
for just the one summer.
We moved back that late summer before school started, and we stayed with Uncle Gifford's, I think. When we came, Uncle Gifford lived in Flint. He was a foreman in the shop in the Buick somewhere. He had a good job. We moved into this one house on the corner of Fenton Road and Ann Arbor Street, I believe. It was a big house, 3 stories. And my father went to work in the Buick. Uncle Gifford got him in the Buick. But my mother didn't like it in Flint, and none of us did. We weren't used to living in town. We were used to living in the country. And my father didn't like it in the shop. He wasn't used to working in the shop. So he looked for a farm, and we finished that year in school, stayed there that year, but in the spring he bought a farm out by Grand Blanc, just off the Grand Blanc Road, and we moved out there. And that's where Mary was born. And she was born at Easter. She was supposed to come Easter week when we had school off, and she didn't come. So I had to stay home a week later because she came later. But we were also glad we had a little girl because we had all those brothers, and we didn't want any more brothers.
On a farm on Grand Blanc Road, and then you went to high school back in Flint.
And Mildred did too. She worked for her own.
Okay. And then your father bought a farm out by Gaines. On what road was that, Aunt Margaret?
On what was
Wasn't Seymour Road, but
Yeah, that corner of Seymour and Baldwin. And the corner, there was
Yeah.
4 roads there. The corner of Seymour and Baldwin.
okay.
And then I still worked my room board, and so did Mildred. Till Mother got a felon on her finger there and couldn't. Felon is a very painful thing, you know. You can't use your hand. It comes from a bruise. So I was told then that was the first I had heard about it. And so one of us had to quit school. Mildred had quit school, and I didn't have too much longer to go. And I finished school there, and then she started school in Gaines, and that's where she met Di. And then Grandpa Hunt lived with us some of that time because Grandma Hunt had died years ago when I could just barely remember her. And Grandpa had later married his housekeeper years later. And none of us liked the housekeeper because she called Grandpa Hunt, and his name was Ira. And we didn't like her to call him Hunt. We thought she should have called him Ira. She was all right, but, you know, we just didn't take her. Then later she died, and so Grandpa lived with, and he was very jealous of Mary because she got a lot of attention, you know. She was a pretty little girl, and he was old and wasn't too agreeable some of the time. So we were always glad when he went to live with Uncle Giffords. He'd stay with them some of the time. Then he went and stayed on, when he was on Uncle Giffords, he went out to Grandma Hunt's grave and stayed there all night. And it was in the spring. And got pneumonia and later died.